Hi everyone, my name is Jesse Eckenroth, and I serve as the Public Works Director for the City of Rancho Mirage. Today, we're on site at the Whitewater Storm Channel. We're on Frank Sinatra Drive low water crossing as it goes through the channel. Currently, there's 16 pipe culverts under Frank Sinatra Drive that convey storm waters during a storm event under the roadway. The recent Valentines Day flood was too much for the pipe culverts to handle, and Frank Sinatra Drive was overtopped with water. While it was overtopped, Frank Sinatra Drive sustained some damage to the roadway, so we thought this was the perfect opportunity to give everyone a status update on the proposed Frank Sinatra Bridge Project. The bridge project will lift the 4 lanes of traffic that run through the channel safely up out of harm's way of the future floodwaters.
Valentine's Day 2019, we had some pretty tremendous storms that came through Rancho Mirage, and it put everyone's focus once again on the Frank Sinatra low water crossing, which during major flood events gets overtopped, and the city has to close that roadway down to protect motorists from driving over that low water crossing. So good timing to give an update on the Frank Sinatra Bridge. I wanted to touch on the current design and funding status as of March 21st, 2019. My name is Jesse Eckenroth. I serve as the Director of Public Works, and I am the project manager for the bridge. So this is just an informational piece really to give everyone an update on where we are standing on the bridge right now. So there's some major considerations when you're going through a bridge design process. Most importantly, you have to have funding for the bridge, and we do have funding programmed. It's through a federal grant that Caltrans administers. So the funding has been programmed for the Frank Sinatra Bridge. We have completed a preliminary design. We've obtained environmental clearance, so those are pretty major steps in the process. Right now, we're around the 65% complete design for the design of the Frank Sinatra Bridge, and we are currently working with CVWD on the hydraulic analysis. And the hydraulic analysis really studies how the water flows through the channel, particularly right here at our bridge location. And the reason that you do the hydraulic analysis, the final hydraulic analysis, after the bridge has a 65% design, is because the hydraulic analysis interplays with the bridge. So depending on where the footprint of the bridge is, how many columns are supporting the bridge, that impacts the hydraulic analysis. So we're at a point where we can model that hydraulic analysis. After hydraulic analysis is complete, we'll move to 95% design. We'll begin to acquire right away as we go through the 95% design plan phase. We'll come to a final design, issue a request for proposal. We will award the project and then construct. So from the city's perspective, these are kind of the major processes we go through before we actually begin construction on the bridge. So the point of this presentation is to focus on how the water moves through the channel. And we're at a point right now where we're going through that analysis with CVWD and how the water flows through the channel at this location and what it does to the channel bed has a large impact on how that bridge is designed. So right now we're actually under some revisions because of the hydraulic analysis and how the water moves through this section of the channel and how it affects the structure of the bridge and the other structures within the channel. So when we talk about hydraulic analysis, there's really 2 main criteria that we focused on. One is water surface elevation, and that relates to the channel having the capacity to carry the storm waters through the channel without overflowing the banks. And the second critical aspect of hydraulic analysis for our bridge is what we call SCOUR, or what you might commonly refer to as erosion. And when you go through the SCOUR calculations and analysis, it's really determining whether the structure of the channel and the facilities within the channel can remain uncompromised during these major storm events where you get significant erosion through the channel. So this slide here is from a storm in 2010, dated December 22nd. As you can see, the Frank Sinatra low water crossing is overtopped. This is the signal in the background is Duval at Frank Sinatra. This car is trying to cross the channel. But the water surface elevation is represented by this white line with the arrows on either side of it. So when we talk about water surface elevation, that's what we're referring to. And when we talk about SCOUR, this is a storm in 2005. Obviously, there's a car that did not make it over the Frank Sinatra low water crossing. It is on the downstream side of Frank Sinatra, upside down in the wash there. But when we talk about SCOUR, what you can see highlighted in that white box is the erosion on the bank. So this is an important consideration when you are designing a bridge structure, because you want to design that structure to withstand significant amounts of erosion, so that should there be a major flood event and there is extreme scour erosion around the bridge, you don't want the bridge to fail because of that. So that's some of the key criteria and analysis we're going through with CVWD right now to finish up the design of the bridge. Another consideration besides water surface elevation and the local scour that we just saw is long-term scour, or what's called incision. The picture on the top is a relatively young channel, so the kind of brown highlight that we're going back and forth of right now is the channel bed. As a channel reaches an equilibrium point over time, it will look more like the picture on the bottom, to where the channel actually gets a little deeper. There's an equilibrium point, and the brown that's below the channel bed, obviously on a older channel, is reduced compared to the channel on the top. So same channel on the top is very young, channel on the bottom has reached an equilibrium point. As you can see on the bottom slide, the water surface elevation is much lower than the water surface elevation on the top. So one of the considerations that we are going through right now is, what does that long-term scour look like at the Frank Sinatra low water crossing? Because ultimately, the water surface elevation will dictate the height of the bridge. So the lower the water surface elevation, the lower our bridge can be. The higher the water surface elevation, the higher the bridge is going to be. So the current condition of the channel right now, this is an aerial image of Frank Sinatra. It's the T intersection is Duval coming into Frank Sinatra. So you can see kind of the natural flow that goes down through the channel. You can see it's a little more sandy where the water naturally flows through. There's some culverts under Frank Sinatra low water crossing, and in most storm events, the culverts that are under the asphalt pavement will convey the water from the upstream side to the downstream side without overtopping the roadway. But in a major storm event, a lot of times those culverts get clogged and the water will overtop Frank Sinatra low water crossing. So the current condition that we see right now out at Frank Sinatra is what's called aggradation, or where we have this speed bump effect. Right now, Frank Sinatra sits a little bit higher than the wash. So when the water comes down the channel, Frank Sinatra low water crossing acts as a speed bump. The velocity of the water slows down, and the sediment that's in the water drops out, and it starts to create this aggradation where the channel bed starts to come up to an equilibrium point that is equal to the top of the roadway. So here's another picture of the aggradation just a little bit further back. So if you were to take the channel bed elevation that is at the bottom of the screen and kind of extend it out You'd see it's pretty close to the top of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. And that's a result of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing being there. Again, it slows the water down in a storm event. The sediment drops out and it starts to collect and stack up upstream of this low water crossing. And ultimately, the equilibrium point would be that soil would stack up all the way back to the next grade control structure, which is at Date Palm Bridge. So as the city and the CVWD have been reviewing and modeling this hydraulic analysis, the city has made an argument that the bottom of the channel is really below the top of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing, and CVWD's stance is that the channel bed is at the top of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. This is ultimately the channel bed. The height of the channel bed will dictate the height of the bridge. There has to be a capacity for 47,000 cubic feet per second to flow under the bridge. So depending on where the bottom of the channel bed is, it's going to push the bridge up or down accordingly. So city's gone through some analysis, and we made an argument that the channel bed is really lower than Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing, and CVWD has taken the stance that the channel bed is actually the top of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. And as I stated, the reason that's important for us is because we have to consider the height of this bridge. So right now, the slide on the left is the corner of Duval and Frank Sinatra. So from this perspective, if you're standing on Frank Sinatra, you'd be looking west and going over Duval. So that section of Duval and Frank Sinatra in this artist rendition is up approximately 6 feet from its current condition. So the higher the channel bed, the higher this corner is going to come up. And the higher that corner comes up, just the larger the bridge gets, and the further back our road work is going to extend, because we have to have a gradual slope from that bridge to our existing roadway. The slide on the right is from a resident's backyard on the corner of Duval and Frank Sinatra. So another reason that we have worked on designing this bridge and the grade control structure that goes under it. We are designing it and working to get this bridge to be as high as it needs to be safe, but no higher, because we have some just aesthetic impacts that we want to minimize the best we can. So this is just another rendition of the bridge. This is from kind of standing on the south side of Frank Sinatra looking east. This is the side of the bridge. So not a very tall bridge, but substantial. You'll see the concrete columns under it. There's a total of 4 that span from the north to the south. The bridge is going to be built in 2 sections, either the north side first and then the south side, or the south side and the north side. So each half of the bridge has to be independently supported. So what's at risk for CVWD, and why would CVWD want to be conservative on their stance of where the channel bed is at? So there's actually pretty good reasons why CVWD has a conservative stance, and they want that channel bed to be as high as possible. There are really 3 main things within the channel that CVWD is responsible for maintaining, and one of them is the concrete channel liner. So that is the concrete bank lining that you will see on most of the channel, especially in Rancho Mirage. 2 is there's water lines that run through the channel. For Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing, there's actually a 24-inch main water line that runs just north of that low water crossing. And see, the higher the channel bed is, the more protection that water line has on top of it. And the third thing that runs through the channel that CVWD is responsible for maintaining are sewer lines. So those 3 things are very critical to everyday services and to maintain the structural integrity. The channel liner is very important for the structural integrity of the channel. So the higher the channel bed is, the more protection those three facilities have within the channel. So this is just a typical section of what a channel liner looks like. This is straight from CVWD's website. This is a just very typical drawing of what you're going to see on the sides of the channel. So what's being highlighted right now is what you would typically see on the side of a channel as you look into the channel. In Rancho Mirage, in many places we have these natinaed brown color, so you'll see the sides of the channel looking brown. What's being highlighted right now, that is representative of the channel bed, and so that's just the soil, that's the channel bed, and the channel liners actually extend down past that, and those dark gray highlights. You don't see how far the channel liner extends down because the soil covers that up. So what CVWD is trying to protect when we talk about erosion is the bottom of the cutoff wall. So where this arrow's at the bottom of the wall, that's what CVWD wants to protect from erosion. So as the bottom, if that bottom of the cutoff wall is ever eroded or scoured so deep that there's nothing to support it, the structural integrity of that channel liner would be compromised. So the higher the channel bed is, the more protection that the bottom of the cutoff wall is. The lower the channel liner, it reduces the amount of protection that's in place when a storm comes through and has significant scour. Here's a picture, Tockwitz Bridge, 1938. You can kind of see at the bottom of the screen, there was significant erosion that occurred and undermined the roadway. You can see a piece of the roadway on the bottom right of the screen just laying, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 feet lower than the section that the gentlemen on the left are standing on. So this is a result of erosion coming through the channel. This is another picture circa 1980. This is Monterey Avenue, and you can see kind of the top left. You can see the bank there has probably 6 to 8 feet of erosion as a result of the storm coming through and just eroding that soil. So most recently, the Jefferson Bridge in 2010 had a pretty significant scour event that came through. This is a live sewer line. This is Jefferson Bridge. This is a live sewer line that was exposed. So if we go back to this picture, it doesn't look tremendously eroded in this picture, but it was enough to expose this sewer line. And the top of the channel bed before the storm was somewhere around this elevation here. But as the storm came through and eroded, it scoured this section out. It exposed the sewer line. It split the sewer line up. And now the condition that we have or had was a live sewer line spilling into the channel. So this is another thing that obviously CVWD wants to protect from happening again in the future. This is a picture here of these clay pipes laying in the channel. These were all connected before the storm, but as the storm came through, undermined the pipes. They separated, ended up spread out throughout the channel. Okay, so to protect this type of infrastructure failure from happening again, CVWD is in the process of developing new guidelines to protect against infrastructure failure, specifically that's caused by this erosion from storm events. So they have proposed for our project some mitigating infrastructure. One is a grade control structure, 2 is the extension of concrete channel lining, and when the Jefferson Bridge repairs took place, they actually implemented a grade control structure and a concrete liner. So post the storm event coming through, these are some of the pictures of what CVWD went out and did at the channel to make sure that it was protected from this happening in the future. So this is a picture, just to give you some scale of the size of this project, of the channel liner that's going to be extended. So on the side of the screen here where the mouse is at is the original channel liner. What you can see below it, you can see just a rebar mat that doesn't have any concrete on it yet, but that's where the concrete's going to be poured, and that channel liner is going to extend all the way down to the bottom of this bank. This is a man right here, and obviously the scale is impressive when you see the size of a man next to this structure. Here's another picture. This is as it goes across the bridge here, it acts as a grade control structure. So it's gonna look like another like a channel liner, but this actually acts as a grade control structure or a speed bump to slow the water down, so that upstream of the bridge the water is going slower, and that the soil actually stacks up upstream of the bridge and it doesn't erode away. So here's a picture of the boom truck filling all this rebar up with concrete. So again, this is just to give a sense of the scale of the project that CVWD went out to perform to keep this type of failure from happening again. So once the grade control structure and the channel liners were extended, this is actually still downstream of the bridge, so they're protecting the mid-valley pipeline that runs up through the channel. This is not a picture of that sewer line that was broken that we saw earlier, but they're putting some articulated concrete block on top of the water lines, and then this will all be backfilled with probably 20 or 30 feet of dirt. So this is the Jefferson Bridge. Again, this is just a picture to give some scale of what's going on here. It's a bulldozer that is in the forefront of this picture, and in the background are two large scrapers, very large pieces of equipment, and they are starting to backfill the articulated block, and then they're going to backfill and cover all the extensions of this concrete channel liner. So this is upstream of Jefferson Bridge. This is where that sewer line was that was broken. So they've dug that out. They've excavated an area here to put a new sewer line in. So the picture here is the new sewer line that's going in. The blue pipe is what's going to carry sewer water, and what's around it is a steel encasement. So the steel encasement in this picture here comes in halves. So the bottom half is obviously what the sewer line is sitting on. It's kind of red on the underneath. And then it's going to have the other half of that steel casing gets put over the top of that sewer line. It gets welded on, and then they shoot sand in between that blue sewer pipe that's in there and that steel encasement. So rather significant infrastructure improvement here on the upstream side of the Jefferson Bridge. So this is after the sewer line was put in. They backfilled it with dirt, compacted it, and again they're putting articulated concrete block on the upstream side of the Jefferson Bridge here. So here's a picture of some articulated concrete block being laid on top of the sewer line. So pretty extensive repairs. You know, they basically had a project in the front here to take out the old sewer line, improve the style of sewer line that went in, and then on top of that, put articulated concrete block on it. And then on the downstream side of the bridge, what we looked at was that grade control structure, and that was constructed to keep this section here from ever having any type of significant scour. So this is a picture, again, with all this infrastructure gets backfilled with soil, so you don't even see any of the articulated block. You don't still see the steel encasement. So again, these are very large pieces of equipment that don't look that large given the scale of this project. So this is post the improvements. This is obviously Jefferson Bridge downstream. We're looking upstream. So where the grade control structure arrow is at, that's on the downstream side of the bridge. And one important note here is that as the water goes over that grade control structure, the water surface elevation drops. So as the water goes over the grade control structure, it gains velocity, as it goes over and the water surface elevation drops. So this is an important component and consideration that we are going to use for our proposed grade control structure for Frank Sinatra Bridge. So here's post the improvement. That highlighted area there is what's left. That's what you see after the storm's gone and all that concrete was poured. This is all that you really see in the channel. So it almost looks like a channel bank, but it's just, instead of running parallel to the channel, it's running perpendicular to the channel. So there's new technical guidance, post-Jefferson. So as I said, water surface elevation is one of the key components that we are analyzing for the design of our bridge and how the hydraulic analysis interplays with Frank Sinatra Bridge. And in January of 2014, CVWD released a new design manual which affects the criteria that we base our bridge design on. In addition to that, in September of 2017, CVWD adopted Ordinance 1234.2, which again, this changes bridge design criteria. So this is kind of in the middle of our hydraulic analysis and bridge design. We get these changes from CVWD as a result of them trying to protect the channel and the infrastructure in there. But you know, it's causing us to go back and really revise a lot of our hydraulic analysis. The other thing that was changed post-Jefferson was the SCOUR guidelines. So CVWD replaced their adopted SCOUR guidelines with draft guidelines in 2017. And those guidelines obviously affect how the bridge is designed and built. So how has the new technical guidance affected the Frank Sinatra Bridge? Well, obviously, one, the observation of Jefferson Bridge encouraged CVWD to establish new guidelines for anything that crosses the Whitewater Channel. The Frank Sinatra Bridge will cross the Whitewater Channel, so our bridge design is going to be affected by these new technical guidelines that are being rolled out by CVWD. So the city submitted hydraulic modeling to CVWD beginning in as early as 2013. We've submitted in 2014, 2016, 2017, and even in 2018 we submitted a final hydraulic analysis. But we are currently updating these hydraulic analysis, and these reports are close to 400 to 500 pages, so it's a pretty major undertaking. But based on the new water surface ordinance and draft SCOUR guidelines, we are incorporating those changes and revising some of the bridge design and modeling. So this is a time-consuming cooperative effort that we go through with CVWD, and how it works is the city will get a hydraulic analysis together. We typically will call CVWD. We sit down and we have a meeting and we explain the reasoning and rationale and kind of the principles that we are trying to establish with our modeling submission. They will take a look at that. They submit it to their engineers, their hydraulic engineers. It's a consultant that they use. That consultant will review a lot of the technical data. They'll report that back to CVWD. CVWD will take a look at what their consultants have stated, and then they'll issue the city a report based on that. The city will then take those findings, sit down with CVWD, typically to just bring some clarity to what they're asking for, and then we take those back in-house. We kick them out to our consultant, our hydraulic analysis and modeling consultants, who then address the comments, and then we resubmit them to CVWD. So to go through some back and forth a couple times with CVWD can take some time. This is not a quick and easy type of analysis that's performed, so it's just it's a time-consuming effort to do that. So in 2018, we submitted a final channel hydraulic report to CVWD, and we did not recommend a grade control structure. So we propose to increase the capacity of the existing channel by lowering the channel bed, and that was one of the first slides where we had talked about. We thought the channel bed was lower. CVWD has made the stance that the channel bed is actually at the top of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. And if we were to do that, we'd actually lower the water surface elevation when you compare it to a system that incorporates an above-ground grade control structure. But CVWD did not agree with the method or the results of our 2018 hydraulic report and is requiring the city to implement some type of channel infrastructure improvements beyond what we had originally intended, and that's due to the removal of the Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. So as we remove Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing to build the bridge, the velocity of the water will not decrease at that location anymore. If we don't put some type of grade control structure in, because currently Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing acts as that speed. It's that speed bump effect that really slows the water down. So CVWD has asked for a couple things, or the consideration of a couple things. One is a grade control structure. Two is the additional protection of the channel liner, and those are both things that we saw happened at the Jefferson Bridge. And three is that there needs to be some additional protection of a 24-inch water line that's on the north side of the current Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. So to meet CVWD's requirements, the city has come up with a proposal for a grade control structure that sits underneath the Frank Sinatra Bridge. So as I stated, when the bridge gets built, the current low water crossing, the road that's there, is going to come out, will not be there. Those culverts are going to come out, so it would just be the channel bed. And then what we're proposing is a grade control structure that would go on top of the channel bed. So to give you your bearings on kind of what this, where we sit when we look at this, the black that I'm highlighting here is the pavement. So that's the asphalt pavement. The four gray columns are the support columns to hold up the roadway. That blue circle right there is a 24-inch water line that's north of the Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. So that's the upstream side. And then the gray that's getting highlighted right here, that's the proposed grade control structure. So that would be a concrete structure that we would pour it under the entire Frank Sinatra Bridge. And then it would extend out a little bit on the south, the downstream side, but mostly where it extends out is on the north side to cover that 24-inch water line. So that water line right there, the grade control structure would cover it. And then the existing channel bed is at the elevation that is highlighted on the left. So the crest of that grade control structure would be even with the existing top of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing. So the brown that's on the left there is the soil that's in the channel, and that would be level with the top of this grade control structure. So the blue that's being highlighted here represents the water surface elevation in a 100-year flood. So one important thing to note is that as the water goes over the top of this grade control structure, it actually drops as it comes under the bridge. And as I pointed out earlier, in the Jefferson grade control structure, the velocity of the water increases as it goes over this downhill section. When it does that, it goes through the channel faster, thereby reducing the height of the water surface elevation. So we have a requirement from CVWD to have 4 feet, which is highlighted in the red, of what's called freeboard. So that's 4 feet of distance between the top of your water surface elevation and the bottom of the bridge. So when a height is a consideration of ours, we are trying to be thoughtful in how we build the grade control structure, not only to protect the water line, to protect the channel liner, and to protect the bridge from SCOUR, but we also want to use it to our advantage to make the bridge as low as possible. So by putting the grade control structure, at least our proposal to put the grade control structure on the upstream or north side of the bridge, would do a couple things simultaneously. One is it encapsulates that 24-inch water line, so that we would protect the water line without having to do two separate type of infrastructure improvements. So this grade control structure would protect from erosion, and it would protect this water line. In addition to that, it would also allow for the water to drop as it comes under the Frank Sinatra Bridge. And by allowing it to drop, we can get that required freeboard. We can move the water through quickly in the area that's protected by the concrete grade control structure, and we can get that bridge to a height that's safe, but that's not up any higher than it has to be. So that's some of the reasoning behind why we have a grade control structure design that is not typical. So typically, you'll see a grade control structure design on the downstream side. Just like the Jefferson Bridge, they had their grade control structure on the downstream side of the bridge. But ours has different criteria. We're going to protect something that's upstream, and we want to keep that water surface elevation down. So one other point I want to make is that not only will the 24-inch water line that's north of the Frank Sinatra low water crossing be protected, but the other utilities that currently run on the downstream side of Frank Sinatra that run through the channel will be pulled up out of the channel, and they will be incorporated into the bridge design so that those utilities will run in the bridge to protect against failure in the future from storms that erode or break lines. We recently had a communication line that was broken in the channel from a storm event. So all of those utilities that are currently in the channel will be brought up out of the channel and run safely through the bridge, with the exception of the 24-inch water line that we will protect in place. So to kind of give you some more bearings on how it would look in the channel, that represents just the channel bed in the whitewater channel. The blue line is the 24-inch water line that runs through the channel. The grade control structure would go on the whitewater channel over the existing 24-inch water line, and then the Frank Sinatra Bridge would lay over the grade control structure. And from an aerial perspective, post-project, this is what I anticipate we would see in the channel. So on the north side of the channel, just like on Jefferson, how you saw some of the grade control structure post-project, you would see that on this project as well. So I kind of highlighted it brown here so it mimicked the Natina channel liner that's currently in place. Click on this here, and we'll just go back to the Jefferson Bridge. So you would see something very similar to this, which would probably be Natina brown in our case to match the channel liner, but that's probably very typical of what you would see on this upstream north side of the Frank Sinatra Bridge. And then on the downstream side, anticipate that there would be a small amount, probably a smaller amount that would be visible from the grade control structure as well. There's a what's called an inseal at the end of that grade control structure, and it's just a little bump up. It's almost like a little speed bump. So as the water goes under the bridge and hits that little bump, it acts as a little speed bump. It slows the water down as it's exiting the grade control structure. So there's a reduction of the scour. So by hitting that little speed bump, the water would slow down, and there would be reduced scour downstream of the grade control structure. So in addition to doing some additional infrastructure improvements, we've also looked at some safety enhancements for the bridge. So the slide on the left is the existing design. So in our existing design, we have one sidewalk. That sidewalk is on the north side of the bridge. Our proposed design is on the right here. And obviously, we're going to have that sidewalk that's on the north side of the bridge, but we also have asked for additional funding for a sidewalk on the south side of the bridge. That way, whether you're heading east or west, you would have a sidewalk, pedestrian sidewalk, to cross the bridge safely. So that's a request we've sent in to Caltrans. So just another kind of drawing of the sidewalk right here on the bottom of the screen. This is where you turn from Highway 111 onto Frank Sinatra. The sidewalk ends at this red line, and we have actually requested that we have a sidewalk as part of this bridge project that extends all the way up to this line. So from 111, you'd have a sidewalk that goes all the way to the bridge, over the bridge, and connects to the sidewalk that's at the current Wolfson Park. So you could go from Wolfson Park all the way to Highway 111 on the south side in a pedestrian sidewalk the whole way. So that's the request we sent in to Caltrans. So the other kind of update I want to give is where we sit with cost. And there's 3 things that we've done to update the cost on this. One is we've used the latest 2017 contract cost data because this bridge was originally submitted in 2010. So there's some upticks in the cost data. We have obviously gone through some CVWD infrastructure requirements, so there's a cost to do those channel infrastructure improvements, and then the addition of this pedestrian sidewalk on the south side of the bridge. So in 2010, we gave a funding submittal to Caltrans of $39,390,000. 2019, where we sit now, that cost has gone to $52,876,000. And that's a result of using the latest cost data, the channel infrastructure improvements, and the addition of the pedestrian sidewalk on the south side of that bridge. Well, 52 million, almost 53 million is no small number, but fortunately for us, there's a way that is going to be allocated out. So how do we spread out 52, almost $53 million worth of improvements to our city? Fortunately, this project is a federal awarded project. So we have a grant that currently is going to cover 88.53% of the project cost. So it's a federal grant that's administered through Caltrans. So eligible expenses, as of now, are going to be covered 88.53%. So Caltrans portion, they currently have 35 million, almost 35 million programmed, and we're asking for an additional almost $12 million, which would bring the federal grant amount that Caltrans administers to $46,811,000. So the bulk of this project, pending this additional request, is going to be covered through a federal grant. What's left? The 11.47% that's left gets split 75% to CVAG, which is Coachella Valley Association of Governments, and it gets split 25% to the local jurisdiction. So 8.6%, which represents $4.5 million, is what CVAG would cover. So currently we have $3 million that's programmed and earmarked for this, and we'd have an additional request of $1.5 million, and that's obvious. These additional requests are to cover these cost impacts that we've just discussed. And the city's share is 2.86%. That equates to $1.5 million. We have programmed a little over $1 million. So to do these improvements, it would cost the city about an extra $400,000. So very substantial amount as far as a project amount. Fortunately, we have a federal grant that covers the bulk of that, and what's left gets split up. So the city's portion, although $1.5 million is substantial, when you look at the total cost of this project, it's not prohibitive. So this, by having these grants and these funding allocations, it allows the city to actually build a project like this. Without a grant, we would never be able to afford a project like this. So schedule milestones. The schedule on a project like this is, before you're in construction, somewhat elusive and difficult to pin down, just based on how many reviews and how many agencies are involved in the review and the funding timelines. So right now, though, what we have is a milestone of April 2020 to get our plans to a 95% design mark. And then our milestone 02 is to advertise for bids in September of 2021. So that's when all the permits are pulled, plans are 100%. So, between April of 2020 and September of 2021, there's a substantial amount of permit process that the city has to go through. We have to get a permit from CVWD. We have to get a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. We have to get a permit from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we have to get a permit from the Water Control Board. So the Regional Water Control Board. So there's quite a bit of work to do in between step 1 and 2. And then step 3 is construction complete. So that's September 2023. So these are our anticipated milestones, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at for timeline here. So just a little background on some channel flow rates from 1989 to 2019. We have some data because there is a stream gauge that's located just 2 miles downstream of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing, and we can get online and we can look at the flow rates through the channel. So it has an average annual peak flow of about 1,500 cubic feet per second that goes through the channel. And the highest recorded peak flow that we have now is 24,000 cubic feet per second, which we have from the Valentines Day flood just recently this year. So a picture of what 24,000 cubic feet per second looks like was taken on my phone. This was about the time that stream gauge registered 24,000 cubic feet per second. So I guess the upside to this is that the channel itself and the channel liners are doing a great job at handling this flow of water. This is a tremendous amount of water, and there is still a lot of capacity that is left in the channel. So as you can see on the side of the channel, there is still a substantial amount of capacity that could come through this channel before it would overflow the banks. You can see the turbulent water on the downstream side of Frank Sinatra Low Water Crossing, so that is causing a lot of the scour and erosion that happens on the downstream side of a grade control structure. Another notable mention is January 11th, 2005, when there was 8,850 cubic feet per second. Here's a picture of what that looks like going through the channel. So again, that amount of water overtopped Frank Sinatra and created a condition where the road is unsafe to pass. So the design capacity for Frank Sinatra Bridge is 47,000 cubic feet per second. So approximately double the amount of water that was flowing through during this most recent Valentine's Day flood. And in addition to the bridge being able to handle that 47,000 cubic feet per second, it has that 4 feet of freeboard, that free space that I had mentioned in that earlier diagram, where the bridge has to be designed to handle 47,000 cubic feet per second, plus have 4 feet of space from the top of the water surface elevation to the bottom of the bridge. So the capacity for the Frank Sinatra Bridge will be tremendously higher than the capacity that we currently have with the low water crossing. And to get a scope of how big the Frank Sinatra Bridge is going to be, I went out and I did a little survey, just an aerial imagery of the Interstate 10 bridges between Palm Springs and Indio. So I did an approximate measurement with an online tool, so don't hold me exactly to these numbers, but they're pretty close. So on I-10, we have Indian, Gene Date Palm, and Bob Hope, all around 420 feet in length. So here's a picture of Bob Hope as it crosses Interstate 10. So this black line that's here represents approximately 420 feet, so a substantial bridge. The next 4 bridges I looked at were Monterey, Cook, Washington, and Jefferson. 850 feet for Monterey. That's the largest of all the bridges that go over I-10 in this stretch. And Jefferson at 680 feet. This was recently constructed within a couple years. Then the last 3 bridges, Monroe, Jackson, Gulf Center Parkway, all these bridges 320 feet or less. So the average bridge length for Interstate 10 between Palm Springs and Indio is 463 feet. The Frank Sinatra Bridge is going to be 1,000 feet. So substantially longer than these bridges that cross over I-10, stretching from Palm Springs through Indio. And one of the reasons that Frank Sinatra Bridge is going to be so long is because it's skewed to the channel. So it doesn't just run at a 90-degree angle across the channel. There's approximately a 55-degree skew right here. So it takes a while for Frank Sinatra to reach the other side, because not only is it going across it, but it's also going upstream or downstream, depending on which way you're traveling. So although it doesn't seem maybe as grand as some of these bridges that would cross the interstate, it's actually almost twice as long, or it's over twice as long, the average length of these bridges that cross Interstate 10. And here's just kind of a bar graph to give you a comparison, a visual here. As you can see, the only bridge that's close in length here is Monterey at 850 feet. But I-10 average 463 feet, and then Frank Sinatra at 1,000 feet. So substantial bridge, even though it's not going to be very high off the ground. You know, there are definitely some challenges with building this bridge over a wash, what the Army Corps of Engineers considers a navigable waterway. And just because it's not going to be, you know, high off the ground, it's definitely going to be an intense build, and at 1,000 feet long, much longer than any bridge that extends over Interstate 10.
I hope you enjoyed the status update on the Frank Sinatra Bridge Project. For any questions you may have, feel free to reach out to the engineering department at City Hall. All of our contact information can be found online at the city's website. The website address is www.ranchomirageca.gov.